Peter, thank you so much for those warm, warm words. I remember receiving that email, and it means so much to me to get to share this moment with you and to get to share it with the other speakers and awardees on stage, including our Dean, John Goldberg, who I just want to take a minute now to thank for stepping up to lead this school in one of our hardest years. Thank you so much, John. It's really special for me also to be here with my wife and my mom and so many wonderful colleagues. But really, nothing makes me happier or more humbled or more honored than getting to spend just a bit of time with you, the class of 2025, on this, your second to last day of law school. I will tell you a little secret about me, which is that I love commencement. My kids know this about me. Whenever like late May comes around, they start going, "Ooh, Daddy, are you so excited for commencement?" I think in part they know that I'm just a sucker for pageantry, and that as, especially as like a semi-secret sci-fi fantasy nerd, pageantry with robes. I will tell you a very quick story about my own Harvard commencements. Each time that I graduated from Harvard, from the college and from the law school, my family, my parents and my little brother, snuck into Harvard Yard, into the staging area for all the graduates, trying to see a sneak peek of me before we marched into the yard. So there in like the sea of black robes is my mom just bouncing up and down on Robinson Hall, trying to spot me. I never figured out how they got past security, and as even then a budding criminal defense attorney, I never asked. But one of the things that I remember so much about that is the look of pride and joy and excitement on my family members' faces when they spotted me in that crowd, which is just to underscore that these aren't just communal celebrations, but they are familial ones. So to everyone who is here celebrating with a graduate whom you have loved and nurtured and supported all these years, I want to say a special congratulations to you. Standing here before you all receiving this award is really one of the proudest moments of my life. I love teaching. I feel alive in the classroom unlike anywhere else that I ever step into. That I get to do this for a living with all of you is one of the greatest gifts in the world. And I feel especially honored to be receiving this recognition from this graduating class. It's sort of an irony for me that you are recognizing me for my teaching because of all of the groups of students that I have come to know. There isn't one that has taught me more than you, class of 2025. I think most of all, you've taught me about courage. I don't think any of us here has lived through a time when true moral courage has been so desperately needed in our society. You are about to graduate into an uncertain and dangerous world. There are a great many of your professors here, people who have spent their lives dedicated to studying the rule of law, who worry that our country is teetering on the edge of authoritarianism. There are some of us, like me, who think we may be already there. I want you to think for a moment just of what you've seen and experienced in your last semester of law school. 2 months ago and 2 miles from here, Rumeysa Öztürk was snatched off the street by masked federal agents. They stole her away through the night and detained her in a federal prison for 6 weeks, all without ever filing any criminal charges against her, solely because she had written an op-ed in her university's student newspaper. She is one of multiple scholars targeted in this way for their constitutionally protected speech, including Mahmoud Khalil, the first to be arrested who remains detained even now, and whom the federal government has fought to prevent from so much as touching his newborn baby boy. This is what authoritarianism looks like. But there's more. In your last semester, you have seen our president try to bankrupt law firms that dared to enforce people's rights. You've seen unprecedented attacks on the Department of Justice that have led to well over 100 lawyers, including many alumni of this school, to resign under protest and under threat. You've seen our president and vice president openly suggest that they would not follow court orders, and have seen multiple indications that the federal government will in fact defy the courts. This, too, is what authoritarianism looks like. And then, of course, you felt what happened right here at home. In an endless barrage, our government has tried to crush Harvard University, the very symbol of higher education in the world, and, more simply than that, our home. Our scientists and international students have been taken hostage, our research bankrupted, our community terrorized, all in an effort to try to change the way that we teach, the questions we ask, and the answers we offer. From climate change to vaccines to the study of race and inequality in our country's past and present, they want us to shut up. Or worse, they want us to say only what they want to hear. This, too, is what authoritarianism looks like. In the face of it, fear is rational, but courage is essential. And to your great credit, you, the class of 2025, have taught us time and again what true courage looks like. In the face of doxing trucks and Twitter trolls, arrests and ad board referrals, lies about who we are and what we do, you have often done what you thought was needed and right instead of what was safe and easy. When you have seen injustice at home, whether in the form of immigration raids, police brutality, domestic violence, forced evictions, or discrimination on the basis of color or creed, you have used your voice and your talents to demand fairness. When you have seen injustice abroad, including atrocities, unending civilian deaths, and imminent famine in Palestine, you have spoken out with courage. If I'm being honest, we, your university, have not always learned well the lessons you were trying to teach. Harvard deserves praise for taking a stand to defend its academic independence. It is just as important for Harvard to use that independence to protect the academic freedoms, including the rights to study, publish, teach, and yes, protest, of everyone on our campus without exception, especially when our messages are politically inconvenient. In this respect, whether in denying degrees to peaceful protesters or suspending hundreds of students and some teachers from our libraries, or firing the faculty directors of our Center for Middle Eastern Studies in what the New York Times called, quote unquote, an offering to the Trump administration, I fear sometimes our university has too often exhibited acquiescence when courage was called for. Sooner rather than later, I am confident we will learn the lessons you tried to teach us, for our own sake and for the sake of this democracy. For as Stanford political scientist Adam Bonica writes, quote, Donald Trump's recent threat to defund universities that permit student protests reveals a deep-seated fear common to authoritarian leaders, the fear of the power of student protests. Throughout modern history, student-led pro-democracy movements have repeatedly proven to be catalysts for toppling authoritarian regimes. In country after country, student protests have been the match that lit much larger movements for freedom and democracy. This explains why authoritarian regimes so often target universities first. They recognize campus networks as crucial nodes in the infrastructure of resistance. Your courage, in other words, is our hope. And should we survive these coming years with our university and our democracy intact, I believe one day we will remember with pride the work you have done here, and that we may regret that we too often told you to hush. For truly, it will not be in quietude or in silence that we find a reprieve. If anything, we need to be saying so much more to each other, not less. And I emphasize to each other, because the hard truth is that these external attacks on our home have come during a time when we have faced internal divisions. Friends of mine who have taught here for decades describe your years at Harvard as some of the most fraught since the Vietnam War, if not ever. These divisions are real, they are painful, and they weaken us. If we are going to get through what's coming, we're going to need to build and rebuild our bonds of human connection with each other. That's going to take humility, and it's going to take some vulnerability. It's going to take the humility to remember that courage is not the same thing as self-righteousness. It is possible to be both courageous and wrong. The goal, of course, is to be courageous and right, and the question is how to get there. And here I'm reminded of a passage that I love, written by our own Duncan Kennedy in an essay about legal education, which I'll paraphrase. The only check, he says, against a just resistance turning into its own form of totalitarian self-righteousness lies in the criticism of friends. I think what Duncan means here is that to avoid committing sins similar to those we stand against, we need each other. We need to be in deep, real human connection with people who will tell us when we risk going too far or when we're missing something essential. That means, of course, we need friends who will disagree with us. In fact, only a broad, diverse coalition of well-meaning, justice-loving anti-authoritarians, a coalition of critical friends, will be able to make us not just strong enough for this moment, but make us better. Building these human connections, especially in times of conflict like these, when our guards are up, also requires some vulnerability. And this one, I am sorry to say, is not something lawyers are always good at. Years of teaching you rhetorical point scoring and risk spotting are not the best preparation for opening up to other people. But I can tell you the rewards of that vulnerability are beyond measure. When we share our souls, when we brave the risk of rejection or of embarrassment, we create the chance to be seen, to be found, to be nurtured and loved by the people who, in the end, will be the ones to link arms with us as we turn our faces toward the storm. This, too, is a lesson you've taught me. In moments of laughter and sadness, and of courage and fear, you have helped me see that I'm my best teacher when I open myself up to you. You've encouraged me to build bonds not just of instruction and mentorship, but of friendship and camaraderie. And for that, I am forever grateful. Vulnerability is hard. This is actually the part of my speech where I will read it to you. My notes say, "Do you really want to do this? Maybe stop here." But as I've thought of how to say goodbye to this class one last time, as you head off into an uncertain and unknown future, my mind has kept coming back to this moment during the fall of your 1L year, when I had to say goodbye to someone who had always been there with me. In that hardest of semesters, when I lost my dad, So many of you were there with me and for me. And a few weeks after my dad died, I found myself standing in Mount Auburn Cemetery at his gravesite, where he's buried alongside some of New England's most famous abolitionists, people who in their own time knew division and courage. We had buried him a few weeks earlier, and on this warm November afternoon, I thought I was standing there by myself. As it turns out, there was an elderly couple nearby, which meant that when I started to sing to my dad this song of farewell that a friend of mine had written over 2 decades earlier, I was inadvertently singing for the first time in public in more than 20 years. Singing in public actually makes me super nervous. I haven't done it in decades, but this song for me is the most special way that I know how to say goodbye to people who I hold so, so very dear. And I thought, if it's okay with you, that I would sing just a tiny snippet of it. Just one last vulnerable way to tell you how much you all mean to me. All right. This might be the thing that gets me laughed off the internet, but we will see. We knew from the start that we'd come to this day, and though it breaks my heart, I know you cannot stay. But nothing will I ever be so glad for than what we will not have here anymore. Goodbye, class of 2025. Thank you, and good luck.